All right, let's go ahead and maybe get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to the August meeting for the Commission on Sustainability. We're going to actually have a really quick meeting today because, it's the end of summer. People are winding down and gearing up for the school year. So we'll have a few updates, and we'll start off with updates from the office.
Um, Hi, I'm Amy Gilder-Basati, Sustainability Manager with the Office of Sustainability. One of the announcements that we have for commission members, in the email that I had sent last week, there is a registration link for you. We're able to offer a climate communications training. It's a series of 3 different sessions. Each one, they're all 3 the same, but you can choose the one that works best with your schedule. There's one in September, one in October, one in November. And so we're able to extend that to commission members. Let me know if you don't have the email, and I'll send that to you again for the registration link. And then another announcement we have for everybody is the climate action plan. We'll be releasing a draft for public review next month, I believe, and October 4th there will be a virtual comment meeting. I'll put the link in the chat for registration for that meeting, which will be October 4th at 6 p.m. We've also been asked to share the food pack, which is with our food policy team leads that group. They have a meeting on September 19th from 3:30 to 5 p.m. and the focus of that meeting will be on food waste. And so since that topic is of interest to folks interested in sustainability, we wanted to share that information. And then if you want to be added to the food pack listserv, I'm going to add the email address in the chat for the person to contact for that information. And then Ava, do you want to share about the Cities Forward initiative?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Amy. Good evening, everyone. Ava Richardson, Sustainability Director for the city. Wanted to share with everyone that Baltimore was accepted along with 24 other cities in the inaugural cohort of the Cities Forward initiative. And this is a partnership between the U.S. State Department, ECLI, Local Governments for Sustainability, Resilient Cities Catalyst, and the Institute for the Americas to provide peer-to-peer exchanges, capacity building, and diplomatic engagement for cities, really all focused around sustainability, inclusivity, and resilience. I'll go ahead and put a link in the chat for folks to access and learn more about, and we'll be releasing a formal press release on the information as well. We're excited for Baltimore to be a part of this first cohort of the program. And each U.S. city is actually partnered with a city in South and Latin America as a part of this cohort. And our partner city is Cali, Colombia in South America. So we'll be providing additional updates on the program as it progresses.
So with that, we're going to just go right into our agenda topic for today, which is the DP3 update, and Aubrey will be giving us that information.
Thanks so much, Mia. Hi, everybody. My name is Aubrey Germ. I'm the Climate and Resilience Planner for the city in the Office of Sustainability. I'm going to be sharing a bit about another planning effort. You guys just heard about the Climate Action Plan very briefly, but we have another planning effort that is currently in the public comment phase, so I'll be diving into that. Let me just share my screen. Is this coming through all right? Full screen? All right, awesome. All right, so the DP3 is kind of the acronym for this plan, but it's an expanded version is the 2023 Disaster Preparedness and Planning Project. So the 3 Ps are there. And so the Disaster Preparedness and Planning Project is basically a long title for Baltimore's Hazard Mitigation Plan. And, mitigation, that term really in this context is about how do we reduce risk? How do we mitigate risk from hazard events? And so preparedness is a big piece of that, as well as other risk reduction efforts So that's kind of the breakdown of that title and what this plan is all about. So a little bit more into what the DP3 is. So the DP3 is the city's roadmap to reducing the risk of natural and human-caused hazards and building resilience. So we use that term a lot. It's kind of been a buzzword lately, but in the term, in the way that we're using it here, building resilience is building resilience to natural hazards. The plan has typically focused on natural hazards, so things like extreme heat, sea level rise, flooding, things like that. But this iteration, we are also including human-caused hazards to a certain extent. There's many of them, and we also acknowledge too that natural hazards is a term that is a little bit of a misnomer, because a lot of the hazards that we are seeing that are weather related are also human caused in a number of ways, or human influenced due to climate change. So our hazard mitigation plan is also our climate adaptation plan, because we are looking at the longer term impacts of climate change on the risk that Baltimore is facing, both in terms of our infrastructure and our people. And so we're really trying to focus on sustaining and implementing actions that reduce losses to people, property, the environment, and the economy, based on a number of potential interventions around policy changes, program development, funding opportunities, and the ability of local government to take action on this. And so the three major elements of this plan are that it includes a risk assessment, so better understanding the risk involved with natural and human caused hazards. So what are the things that are likely to impact the city, and then how is that going to impact us? Is it going to impact our infrastructure, our buildings, our transportation, our health, things like that? And so then we've got our capabilities assessment, which is also included in the plan, which kind of identifies what resources do we have to try to mitigate this risk. So it looks at regulatory, administrative, financial, and staffing capabilities as it stands currently. And then we have the mitigation strategy, which is kind of the actual actions that can be taken to reduce this risk. So how do we mitigate? How do we reduce the risk to our people and our economy and our buildings and our infrastructure that develops resilience long term, as we know these things are going to be potentially increasing in nature, in frequency, and in unpredictability. So just a quick snapshot of some of the hazard impacts that we've seen over the last couple of years. So we had some major flooding along Frederick Avenue in Southwest Baltimore. That was the same flood event that also heavily impacted downtown Ellicott City that many heard about, but it also severely impacted Baltimore City in a major roadway, as well as over 140 homes in this area of the city. We also had significant flooding, for example, around the Jones Falls Expressway, the Jones Falls River, which is a heavily channelized stream that also is prone to extreme flash flooding, which means the waters can rise very, very quickly with little warning. There's also been things like sinkholes, for example, the North Avenue sinkhole, which often can be caused kind of by kind of multiple different factors, but can be caused both by things like heavy precipitation, subground erosion, and infrastructure failure at the same time. So there are a number of climate factors that also can play into increasing sinkhole impacts. And then we've also got things like extreme heat waves that are continuing to happen, not only in isolation, but coupled with other events. For example, the pandemic. We had a number of extreme heat days in the summer of 2021 that happened at the same time. People were we were all under stay-at-home orders, where we were more socially isolated than we've ever been. And our homes, a lot of homes in Baltimore are not equipped, for example, to have the kind of air conditioning or cooling opportunities that you might need in extreme heat waves. So having to stay at home in a really hot row home without proper air conditioning and in a socially isolated way means that there's a lot of vulnerability to extreme heat, and there's going to continue to be a lot of vulnerability to extreme heat in Baltimore. So again, these are just a few examples, but just wanted to give a kind of a real sense of what this plan is kind of looking at, assessing the risk to and the vulnerability to, and trying to find those solutions to reduce the impact that these kinds of events can have. And so the benefits of mitigation planning are really that, the more that we can be proactive and being on the prepared side, rather than kind of doing nothing and then waiting for stuff to happen and then focusing on recovery, it can really benefit the city both safety-wise and economically. And so it really just makes a lot of financial sense to invest in mitigation. That means that proactive risk reduction. And so mitigation saves $6 for every $1 spent. So that's kind of saving, almost $5 down the road of avoided costs. So if we're investing now, we have less likelihood of extreme damages down the road, which means less money needing to go to recovery and response and spending money on the response and recovery side, which is a huge issue. If you guys are familiar with a lot of major disasters across the country, so much money is spent on response and recovery, which has just kind of been the case, and probably will still be to a large extent, but investing in mitigation is really, really critical to trying to get ahead of some of these disasters that are probably likely to happen. And then, hazard mitigation can also serve as kind of that investment catalyst for things like economic development, revitalization and beautification, conservation, and then cost savings overall. So here's just some examples of, what kinds of investments can actually really help. And, with Baltimore, flooding is a big issue. So investing in flood mitigation could really save a lot of money down the road, and then also just improve welfare here today, and lived experiences of people in their neighborhoods and in their communities, and also health and well-being overall. So there's a lot of things that probably aren't necessarily calculated here, but just underscoring the importance of getting ahead of some of these things by investing in preparedness. So some opportunities here with this plan, just a little more info. So it's required by the Federal Disaster Mitigation Act, which is kind of a federal mandate for jurisdictions and states to have a hazard mitigation plan that is approved by FEMA, so approved by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, in order to have access to certain federal dollars for mitigation, and for certain post-disaster recovery dollars as well. So having a FEMA-approved hazard mitigation plan is required for this grant funding opportunity, which can be, in the millions and hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's a really great funding opportunity that we have this plan in place. It is required to be updated every 5 years. So the last time the plan was updated was in 2018, and what is currently underway is the 2023 update. And so there's multiple different grant programs that are associated with having this plan in place. You can see there on the left. But I do want to highlight one already big win for the city of Baltimore for having this plan and linking it to going after grant funding opportunities, the Middle Branch Resiliency Project. So $31 million was received by the Middle Branch Project in FEMA funds. I think they applied 2 years ago and it was awarded last year. And this is to support the waterfront restoration happening around the Middle Branch area of South Baltimore. And so this is not the whole project, but it supports a good chunk of the project in that mitigation aspect, that protecting and restoring the coastal environment, which mitigates sea level rise, which mitigates coastal flooding, wave inundation and wave action, and also shoreline erosion. And so there's a lot of projects here that are happening that fall within this Middle Branch project that are really that proactive environmental protection, coastal protection, and hazard mitigation aspect. So just something to keep in mind, keep your eye on this project. It's really, really awesome. And FEMA funds, FEMA mitigation dollars are going towards this project, and that they successfully received that under the BRIC program, that Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities. So there's a lot of opportunity here for kind of dialing up the the mitigation aspects of infrastructure projects. So, as we're doing things like, upgrading our infrastructure in different ways, how can we dial that up and incorporate resiliency into that, resilient materials, that longer term outlook of how is this going to, protect us against the, more extreme temperatures that we're going to be seeing, the more extreme precipitation that we're going to be seeing, things like that. It's really important that as we are doing our capital projects in the city, we are thinking about how climate change is going to be impacting the city more and more. So it's just an example there of the impact of this plan and the potential for more impact. So this planning process has been going on for the last year. This is kind of just a quick overview of what this planning process looks like. So all the way from organizing resources, understanding what already is out there in existing city plans that touches climate change and hazard mitigation and resiliency, conducting capabilities assessments, doing the risk assessment, all of that. We are now here in phase 7. Actually between phase 6 and phase 7. And so throughout all of this, though, we have been conducting community engagement. So I'll explain more of that in the next slide, but community engagement has threaded through all of this. But right now we do have the draft of the plan available for public comment. So we're in that phase 6, phase 7. We're reviewing preparing the draft and reviewing the draft. And that's why I'm here today, to invite all of you to participate in this part of the process and engage with the plan. So over the last many months, this has kind of been the structure of the engagement process. So we've had a core planning team, which has been our Department of Planning staff, including myself and Ava and some others. We've also had a consultant team that we've been working with to support some of the engagement, as well as the heavy technical components of this plan. And that's been Tetra Tech. They've been awesome to work with. And then we've also had heavy involvement from our Office of Emergency Management, which is a key piece to reducing risk and improving safety and resilience in Baltimore, as well as our Department of Public Works, as they handle a lot of the infrastructure that relates to flooding and our waste streams. So that's been the core planning team. It's been meeting every 2 weeks for many months at this point. That help really set the structure of the planning process and guide, all of the kind of aspects of the planning process. And then the Hazard Mitigation Advisory Committee, or the HMAC as we've called it, is that larger advisory body that's been meeting once a month to support the and provide direct feedback to the different aspects of the planning process. So that's been a number of city stakeholders, city agencies, nonprofit organizations, some businesses, and some regional governments as well, and other and even some federal as well. So that's been a really great committee that's really helped set the kind of structure, as well as provide direct feedback every step of the way, and make sure that what's being included in the plan is stuff that's relevant to them, because a lot of the folks on that committee are going to ultimately be the implementers, those that are able to help with hazard mitigation actions in the city. And then we also had an equity subcommittee to that HMAC, which was a group of just residents in Baltimore who are interested and care deeply about building resilience in the city. That way, we had the subcommittee so it wasn't that residents' voices weren't drowned out by city agencies and other kind of institutional stakeholders, and more have this kind of close-knit conversation, hearing directly from residents on what their thoughts and opinions were and lived experiences with hazards were, so that we can have this plan be as reflective of that as possible. And so we've had some really wonderful conversations in those equity committee meetings. And then we've also had the stakeholders and general public. So we shared out a number of surveys and had a number of community meetings where broader public engagement was had. And then kind of the key components here too are the state and federal level engagement of our MDEM, which is the Maryland Department of Emergency Management, and then FEMA. And so those are the two agencies that ultimately have to review and approve the plan because that's part of their required process, and an important piece to making sure that Baltimore's plan is something that adheres to the different standards out there for hazard mitigation plans. So the overall vision and goals of this plan, these were updated this year based on a lot of feedback from the HMAC. You can read them here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but really reflective of improving and protecting, health, safety, and welfare, reducing risk to disasters, building resilience, and really trying to spread awareness too. I think that's a really big piece. Sometimes hazard events can happen out of nowhere, but being aware of the things that can help our communities weather these events and get through on the other side and build back better, is a really key piece as well. So what I would consider like disaster literacy is a big part of this, as well as, all the prevention planning and actually getting funding to be able to implement some of these projects is a key piece. To walk you through the framework of the plan real quick, so you're familiar with it if you do choose to help and participate in the public comment process. So it's a large plan. There are a number of sections, and so kind of focusing your time and attention to certain sections that you're most interested in or have some experience in would be really, really helpful. So the introduction and the city profile really sets the foundation for the plan and why it's going to be specifically tailored to Baltimore and Baltimore's needs and specific vulnerabilities. And then our risk assessment, section 3, really looks at the risks involved with the different hazards. And then sections 4 to 11 are the hazard profiles. So they really overview the different hazards of concern that you see there on the right. Those are the main ones that are featured in the plan because they are what Baltimore is most vulnerable to. And so if you're interested in data around those types of events, the different just statuses of it will overview the background of those types of events happening in the city. So looking back, and then also has some, looking ahead components as well. So there's some really interesting mapping and information in the hazard profiles. And then we've got the capability assessment, which as mentioned is that assessment that looks at existing resources to be able to do mitigation in Baltimore. And then the mitigation strategy, section 13, if you're really interested in what are the actions, what are the strategies actually included in this plan to reduce hazard risk. Section 13 is a great place to take a look at and see how the different risk mitigation actions are listed there. And if they are something that you're interested in commenting on, would love to get your feedback there, especially because that's going to guide the framework for implementation moving forward. And then section 14 and 15 are really that, how are we going to maintain this plan? How are we going to provide updates and make sure that it is getting implemented? And then section 15 is called moving forward, and that's kind of thoughts and ideas for how to make this plan better moving forward into the future, because again, it has to be updated every 5 years. So it's a fairly short cycle. So having thoughts and ideas for how to make it even better the next time around is something that we always include in the plan in the moving forward section. And then there's a glossary of terms. There's a lot of jargon. I'm sorry if I'm using it. There's a lot of jargon in this kind of plan. I try to reduce it, but it's hard. So there's a glossary that really details some of the jargon there. And then Appendix A really details all of the engagement work that has been done from start to finish in this planning process. The survey results are in there. The feedback that we received at the different community meetings is in there. So that's another section to take a look at. And then because these plans have to be updated every 5 years, they tend to be cumulative. So rather than starting completely from scratch, brand new plan with nothing building off of the previous plan, it does all build off of the previous planning effort. So it really looks at what happened over the past 5 years and what's different now from 2018 in 2023 that we should be looking to for the next 5 years. So they really all build off of each other. And so the changes, noting the shifts kind of in between the plans is an important piece to this. FEMA really also needs that kind of documentation to show, what have we changed and what is shifting based on new information and new data. So here's just a snapshot of some of the changes that were made, including, as I mentioned, adding in some human-caused hazards, specifically cyber threats and hazardous materials. As many of you know, we had a ransomware attack in the city back in 2019, which was, a major hazard event. And then we also have had a number of hazardous materials incidences as well especially transportation-related ones. So those are profiled in here and included. And then we also included more information on our socially vulnerable populations, hazard inequities, essentially, and how underserved communities in Baltimore are often more deeply affected by hazards and have higher risk. And a few more things listed there. So as mentioned, for public engagement, we've done a number of things so far. It's just some photos of our engagement work from our open house in June. Maybe some of you were there. And as mentioned, we did a number of surveys. We had a general public survey. We had a stakeholder survey. So more specifically, our nonprofit business partners, other like institutions whose work and operations might be affected by a disaster. So getting their specific feedback on that, on with specific questions was really important. And then we also surveyed our neighboring jurisdictions, so like Howard County and Anne Arundel County and Baltimore County, to better understand what types of hazard mitigation planning they're doing and how ours can integrate, and because we know that disasters and hazard events don't stop at county lines. They can really, they can really go across the lines, and they can affect, what one county is doing or not doing can really affect a neighboring county. So, if a dam fails in Baltimore County, it could really heavily affect Baltimore City, and we need to be prepared and also collaborate on what we're doing to mitigate that risk, for example. So kind of that's a lot of the background on this planning effort, but one of the big reasons, I'm here sharing this all with you is to invite you to participate in the public comment period, which started August 11th and is going through September 8th. We actually extended that to September 11th, so we have a whole nother weekend beyond the 8th there. It is already posted on the Conveo public comment platform, which is something that the Baltimore Planning Department uses for public comment on plans. And so the link is here. I'll also put it in the chat, or Amy, if you're able to, that'd be awesome. You can just click on the link. It takes you to the homepage, which has a link directly to the disaster preparedness plan draft. So you'll be able to access the plan immediately without creating an account. But I will just say, if you go to make a comment without creating an account, you will have to identify yourself every single time you make a comment. So the way to avoid that is to create your own user account with that has your own name attached to it. And so that every time you click in the comment tool to make a comment, it automatically includes your name, and then you just create the comment. So it's a bit easier that way. So just create a free user account to do that. And then you'll be able to comment directly in the plan. So as you're reading it, if you see something that says, that you're like, I would like more detail on this, or this doesn't quite make sense, or I don't know if this is accurate, you can click directly on the sentence or the fact or whatever it is, and a comment bubble will pop up, and you can just type it right in. And that'll be saved, and other people will be able to view it, and you'll be able to view other people's comments as well. And then each chapter of the plan is posted separately, so you can navigate it quickly and easily by, whatever part of the plan you're most interested in. So here's just a quick view of what it looks like when you've clicked into the plan. You can navigate the plan on the top left, so you see where it says introduction. That's because this is showing the introduction section. But if you click that drop down, you'll see all 16 sections that I mentioned, and you can go directly to the various sections. And then table of contents shows the subsection of that. So if, for example, in this introduction, the role of social vulnerability is a subsection, that would be something under the table of contents that you could navigate to. So those two drop downs on the top left are the way to navigate the plan. And then you can see other people's comments. So if you see these little yellow bubbles, that's what other people have shared. And you can click on those and see what people are saying. And you can say that you agree with it or disagree. And you can kind of have that interactive, conversation if you are interested. And then you can add your own comments by clicking anywhere in the plan. So all you need to do is just click on something and you'll see your comment bubble pop up and you can type it in. So to detail what's to come, So it is, like I said, kind of there's a process involved because of some FEMA requirements and state requirements as well. So we are in this draft DP3 public comment period. I presented to the Planning Commission a couple weeks ago to invite them to comment. So I'm here inviting the Sustainability Commission and the public to comment as well. We are also trying to get the word out about commenting on the plan through other city agencies and stakeholders. We're trying to get some regional partner comments on the plan as well, broader community comments. And then right now it is also under state review. So the state Maryland Department of Emergency Management is also reviewing the plan right now and providing their comments. So we're really hoping to gather as much info and input as we can now on the draft. And then we're going to incorporate that feedback, create kind of another draft of the plan that is more final. That gets submitted to FEMA. FEMA then reviews the plan. They have 45 days, and they provide a lot of comments back to us. Hopefully not too many. Hopefully we checked all the things that they needed and made sure that it was in accordance with their standards. But any feedback that they give us, we then incorporate. And then FEMA grants the plan what's called an approval pending adoption status or APA status. So that basically means FEMA approves the plan, but the city has to then formally adopt the plan. And so for Baltimore, the process is getting the plan kind of formally adopted through the Planning Commission, but also through the Sustainability Commission. So I'll be presenting it first through the Sustainability Commission at the mid-November meeting, and then we'll be presenting it to the Planning Commission at their November 30th meeting for their formal adoption, and they have to sign the city's adoption resolution that says we approve it, we've adopted it, and then it's done. And then a resolution is submitted, FEMA grants their final approval, and that is this whole very bureaucratic process. So just to set some transparency on this for everybody, a hazard mitigation planning effort does look like this in every jurisdiction in every state. So it is just something to be familiar with and just kind of understand what this all entails. And the 2018 disaster preparedness plan, as I mentioned, every 5 years is the requirement. It does expire December 20th. That's when it was approved 5 years ago. And so that is the date that we are aiming to get everything, finalized and approved by. So we are very much on track for that, very excited about this, and just really hoping to get as much public feedback as we can to make the plan as relevant and influential as possible. And that is, that's it. So thank you so much. Hopefully I didn't confuse anyone too much and gave some good background for you all, and hope to have some great comments from everybody. I'll take any questions that anyone might have in the meantime.
Thank you, Aubrey. And just to add, as a reminder for how important it is that we receive feedback from folks on this plan, this year, the city is updating some pretty major plans that relate to climate action. That includes the disaster preparedness plan that Aubrey just provided us an overview of, but also our climate action plan, as well as the city's comprehensive plan. It's so essential that we hear back from our residents, from stakeholders, and constituents about these plans and what they want to see to ensure that they appeal to the challenges that you have in your everyday life, or you have every day as it relates to climate changes that we're all experiencing. It's also a really exciting time to be having these conversations because of the level of federal investment in funds that are supporting this work across the country. And so as we're updating these plans, we're keeping particular projects in ways that we could potentially leverage those investments and really trying to work proactively on that in mind. But wanted to thank Aubrey for the presentation and really highlight the need for the input from the public.
Thank you both for that. I wanted to just highlight the fact that this will come before the commission again in November. And so making sure that your input is on here, even if you just sign in and say, sounds good, it'd be really great since we're going to need to vote on this to make sure that the process continues to move forward. At this point, I want to open up the floor for any commission members to ask any questions, if there are any. All right, hearing none, I'm going to just keep on moving. Ari, thank you very much for the presentation. Looking forward to reading and kind of getting some updates and then sharing the word as well. For the next part of the meeting, we're just going to go into really some commission planning. And so for those of you that aren't interested in listening to how we're going to be moving forward, feel free to stay or participate or hop off. I'm going to put a quick link in the chat. It's a Jamboard where we're going to take some notes for the next part of our meeting. Commissioners, after the meeting, you will receive a survey via email with just a few reminders and a few links to the training that Amy mentioned earlier, a document for some of this planning to kind of continue this with time frames that you might want to shift our standing meeting to. But for this next portion of the meeting, we're just going to discuss some of the ways that some of the agenda topics that you might be interested in participating in, leading, hearing, guests that we might need to invite. And the topic for next month, while we get ready to bring on additional commission members and a co-chair, the topic for next month, which will be Wednesday, September 20th, will be people and water. We have a few partners in the area that will be inviting to that, but if you can go on Jamboard for those who have the ability to do that, what we're looking for this next portion of the meeting is just some thoughts about what you might want to see at future commission meetings. We have lots of great things going on in Baltimore. This is a time where all of the plans are converging and coming together. We have new sub-cabinet positions where sustainability has been elevated to a position that is the first in Baltimore's history. And so there's a lot of great things going on. We have often used our meetings as a platform to elevate community engagement opportunities and to highlight issues that might need additional kind of spotlight. And so we'd like to take the opportunity to think about having meetings in person and hybrid environment, having meetings where we're actually going and visiting locations to get a better understanding of what is being done in plans. And so I don't have Jamboard pulled up. I don't know if Amy, you might want to share it just to see what.
Yeah, I can share my screen if that's helpful.
That'd be so helpful because I'm trying to keep my computer from spontaneously combusting. We've started off with just like a few thoughts. I know that time is difficult, knowing that this is a great pickup time, school starting next week for most of our schools. Some schools have started already. So we have some general consideration. This meeting has typically been Wednesday, 4 to 6. And council meetings are held on Mondays. No one wants to meet on a Friday. So we'll be asking everyone to consider time frames on a Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, starting at 4, starting at, I think, 5 and then 6, with a typical 2-hour meeting. For those meetings where we go on site, they can actually, by majority decision, we can have those meetings held on weekends or any other time. This commission has great flexibility as long as there is a public announcement of when it will be. And so for those off-site meetings, it might be that we have limited registration so that we can include the public if possible or if necessary. Not necessarily if necessary, but just to be able to have that inclusion. So I want to stop talking just to make sure that everyone has an opportunity, commissioners, to give any feedback at this point or ask any questions.
I just had a clarifying question, Mia. Do you want us to actually put a sticky note, or if we like the current time, can we vote I mean, I know Miro, I don't know Jamboard that much, but
Yep. So
actual instructions.
there will be a survey that's going to commissioners where you can indicate the time that you prefer. You can also put a note on Jamboard saying that please don't move it. I have it on my calendar right now as a recurring meeting and they've planned my life around it. The purpose of the Jamboard is to also give any guest an opportunity to say what you might want for us to address. And Jamboard is if you want us to place a note on here and that's not something that you're familiar with, you can also throw it in chat and then we can put it on the Jamboard.
This is Don's O. I'm happy with the way that meetings are going now, the times that are happening. I was just asking, is there a reason why we would be changing it from the current schedule?
Yes, some commissioners have responsibilities at 4 or a little before 4, which makes an in-person or hybrid meeting a difficult thing to attend. And so as we are preparing to have hybrid meeting options, we want to just make sure that we open it up to see what might work best for the group. Does that help? Gonzo.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I was just wondering why it was a subject. I'm open to whatever anyone agrees to. I was just wondering why it became a subject.
Can I ask a follow up on that? What do we think is going to happen with hybrid over the coming year, right? Because I agree, 4 to 6 as someone with kids, like, it's a lousy time to try to get downtown to the meeting. But this works for me because this works, right? like if you can just multitask a little and get to a place for the call. Do we think that our energy is going to be directing more towards in person, or is there a sense that we're going to be mostly online?
I think it really depends on what the commission would like to have. And being able to have a mix of both. We did try that hybrid meeting. I was in Texas and there were a few people in the room and our technology wasn't really accommodating what we needed to have for presentation. And so I think that knowing that for some commissioners, all of their commission experience has been in a virtual environment, I personally think that a virtual environment allows more people to be both guest and attendee, whether they're local or in another state. We do have a commissioner who sometimes is in another state on a very regular basis. And so that's been it's been helpful to have the flexibility of the platform. But it might be that we have some tours that we need to see, and so planning around that. And then at one point there was a desire for commission meetings of all types to come back in an in-person environment to, in reopening. And so as we look at what meetings and life looks like after being forever changed by the impact of COVID, this is to kind of capture some of that.
I just kind of wonder, sorry, I could be a good citizen and Jamboard this, but let me ask in case other people have reactions. Like, it seems like could we do something like quarterly or semi-annually, have one that would always be hybrid available, right? But like where it's like, hey, let's get this on the calendars when we're going to try to be in person, and then just say, and the other ones are virtual, right? Just so like we like have a sense of expectation and planning.
I think that's a great idea.
Do you mind if I chime in just quickly, Mia? Ben, I think you're kind of touching on exactly what the spirit of this activity is. In 2024, we want to have a more predictable schedule for the commission meetings, both in terms of the topics and themes that we're addressing, whether or not they will be virtual, whether or not they will be hybrid, or whether or not they will be in person. tours to kind of explore specific projects as it relates to climate mitigation or adaptation or other projects. So we really want to ensure that as we're thinking through the schedule for next year, we are curating or leveraging this time that we spend together every month to the best of our ability to connect commissioners and the public to what is going on across the city, to the progress on climate actions that we're making and seeing across the city, and partner with different agencies as well as stakeholders in nonprofit organizations, and ensuring that we can also enhance or kind of like get the commission to lean into the oversight role that it essentially is intended to play, as the primary role is kind of like overseeing that implementation of the sustainability plan and how we can formalize that. So we want to make sure that we are ensuring we hear from you and other commissioners in terms of what that looks like. So the goal is predictability. The goal is to help Amy and I and our team plan better, and all the commissioners, and really to seek more engagement from commissioners overall in the public.
Thanks, Ava. Sure. So the Jamboard link is in chat. Just given a moment or so for people to take some comments here. And then commissioners, if there are any other questions. And for those that are waiting for appointments, if you have any questions, welcome to share those as well.
And while I'm sharing my screen, I'm not able to easily see in the chat if anybody's suggesting anything to add to the Jamboard, so let me know if there's anything in the chat.
Nothing at this point. And then just for the oversight, we know that in November, that will be an oversight meeting where we're going to be taking a vote on the DP3 plan. And so that is what oversight means, not to just oversimplify it, but to help explain that.
Yes, thank you, Mia, for mentioning that. And if it's helpful for folks, so some of the descriptors that Amy had laid out in terms of like the different types of meetings that we could potentially be having. So that included the oversight, kind of like site visit, topical meeting, and more kind of like social or kind of like convening engagement focused meeting. We can go over or paste kind of like descriptions of what we envision those to look like if anyone has any questions about it. Or if there's other types of meetings or other ways to better leverage the time that we spend together every month, we can explore and entertain that as well. So we're not limited to just those 4 categories.
And to talk through some examples, just as far as to help envision what some of these types of things might look like. A site visit meeting, some of the types of things that we had done pre-pandemic was occasionally have a meeting in a location that was relevant to the topic. And so I could potentially see like having a meeting in the Middle Branch area if we were talking about like shoreline issues or access to waterfront or something like that. In some cases, there might be locations that add to the topic of the meeting if we would choose to have a meeting offset in a particular location.
So, this is Don with Edgy, also commissioner, but we can host, especially when you talked about the middle branch, we can host at several locations. We can also host a boat tour. So if we could do a commissioner's boat tour, we can host that up to 30 people to do a both historical, racial historical event, industrial history, and ecology of the environment of the water. We can host that for sure. So, I mean, we're limited to about 30 people, but we can host that event. And I think that'd be pretty good for the commission if we all went out there on the water of the middle branch.
Denzel, is there a time of year that is a better time for that activity?
You can tell me, and based on our schedule, I would think October would probably be the last month to do that this year. We could probably do early spring next year as well.
Thank you. That's great. Great example. I really appreciate that.
No problem.
Mia, this is Phil with the Convention Center, and you know that you guys are also always welcome to host an event over here if you need. Some of you guys, including Ava, know that we got bees in the last year or so, and we've done a couple of different events where some of the folks from the company will come out, and there's different, they'll walk you through the process of getting the honey from the hives, and there's other educational things. So if you ever wanted to host something here, and if we could ever engage them as well, it might be a cool educational opportunity. And they can talk about what they've seen as far as the hives in the city, because they actually have quite a few, not just at the convention center, and what, some of what they've seen from the hives and, the flowers and everything that that the bees are visiting.
Bill, is there a time of year that could work better for that type of experience?
We're flexible, and I think the honey, if you were going to do one of the, my mind is escaping me, it's 5 o'clock, but of actually getting the honey, like extracting it, that would be like in the fall, but there's a variety. They have a number of other ways where they could engage, and they have different educational opportunities. And obviously we can host. If we weren't going to do the bee component, we could host anytime.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So I don't want to belabor this. If there's anyone else that has any thoughts on what they might like to see, this Jamboard is going to be available until the 31st of August. Commissioners, you will receive in your inbox a survey to really formalize this process just a little bit more. But anyone, I do see that there was a comment about the Maryland naturalists through University of Maryland, and of course I have to give a plug for Master Gardeners as well. So I think that those are some great topics to add. We will in November, we're looking at bringing the students who are working, and this is where you're gonna have to help me out, Ava. Abby has been leading the student interns for quite some time. The program was very instrumental in helping with some of the advocacy around styrofoam. So in November, there will be a new program leader for that program. They will have a recruitment of young interns, and so we'll have an opportunity to meet the students who have been recruited and hear some goals for the program and have some engagement with the commission. That way, we'll have something that's on the books, and hopefully by then, before we vote on the finalized DP3, hopefully the appointments will be teed up so that we can keep that process moving as well. So with all of that, our next meeting is Wednesday, September 20th. The topic will be people and water. You'll have the updates and public agenda will come out in short order. And if there is nothing else, we can bring the August meeting to a close. All right. Hearing none, I'd like to close the meeting. Good to see everybody.